My name is Mireille, and I'm 32 years old. I was born in Cameroon, a place where life is simple, the community tight-knit, and the struggle to survive feels like a constant rhythm. I came to Dubai hoping for a new beginning. I was young, ambitious, and full of dreams, the kind that come with a promise of wealth, success, and independence. At the time, I never imagined I would become a prisoner to something darker than my worst nightmares.
Welcome to today's powerful testimony. In just a moment, you're going to hear an incredible story of survival, strength, and redemption that proves the reality of God's love and power. But before we dive in, I need you to do a few things. Please like this video, drop a comment below to tell us where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. This channel is here to share hope, healing, and truth. And if this testimony moves you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you've had an experience that made you believe in God's power, share your story in the comments and join the conversation. Let's spread this message together.
I used to be a high-end escort. I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone choose that? That's exactly what I thought when I first stepped into this world. But desperation can make you believe anything. When I arrived in Dubai, I was taken by the city's shine. The bright lights, the towering buildings, the luxury cars. It felt like stepping into a world where all the struggles of my past could disappear. And for a while, it seemed like it did. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I thought I was in control, that I could walk away whenever I wanted. I thought my life was just like any other woman's who might trade time for money, taking what I could and keeping what mattered, my independence. I was wrong. I'll admit I was naive. I thought the world was my oyster. I thought the luxury of Dubai would make me feel alive and powered. I was just one of many women who wore designer clothes, who worked for high-end clients, who had a life most people could only dream of. But what I didn't see, what I refused to see, was that behind the luxury was a darkness, something evil that I couldn't even begin to understand. For all the glamour, there's a price you don't see. The truth? It's easy to believe that the life you thought you knew is just the way things are. You get caught in the web of desire, wanting more, wanting to be someone special, someone wanted. But all that glitters, it doesn't always shine. And I learned that the hard way. When I first arrived, I was starry-eyed. I thought I was chasing freedom, but it didn't take long to realize that the very thing I thought was liberation was actually the start of a prison I would never escape from unless God stepped in. I was living in a dream, but this wasn't the fairy tale ending I had imagined. And that's where my story really begins. The life I thought I knew was about to be shattered. I was living in a bubble. I thought I knew everything I needed to. Sure, I had my doubts now and then, but the excitement of this new life in Dubai kept pushing them away. The city glittered like a dream, a shiny facade that hid everything ugly beneath. At first, it all seemed so innocent. A few meetings with clients, the thrill of being wanted, and the rewards that came with it. No one told me I'd be sold into hell. That night was like any other. I was preparing for another client, a man who'd booked me through a well-known agency. They all felt the same at first. Rich, powerful, eager to indulge in whatever made them feel superior. But this one, there was something about him. Something that didn't sit right in my gut. He wasn't like the usual men I saw. He wasn't flashy in the way the others were, with their designer suits and expensive watches. No, this one was different. He had this calm, almost too calm demeanor. His eyes were dark, piercing, almost like they were looking straight through me. He smiled when he saw me, but it wasn't warm. It was more like a predator who had already made its decision. I brushed it off. I had to. In this world, you can't afford to entertain every gut feeling. It's all part of the game. Play your part, get paid, and move on. I didn't have time for instincts. We met at a luxury hotel, the kind where everything feels too polished, like it's designed to make you forget you're in a real city and not a stage for a movie. He led me to his room with such ease, like he owned the place. And in some way, I guess he did. I remember feeling like I was just another prop in his world of indulgence. I tried to push the unease away as he poured me a drink. He was well-spoken, polite even, but there was an unsettling stillness about him. He asked questions that seemed too personal for someone I'd never met before. Where did I come from? Why did I come to Dubai? What did I want out of life? The usual small talk, but somehow it felt different. It felt invasive. I gave him the answers I always gave. I had to play the role. I told him about the dreams I had, the hope that I'd make something of myself, that I was here to escape my past. It was a lie, but that's what you do in my line of work. You become what they want you to be. You sell a version of yourself. But he didn't seem satisfied with my answers. He kept pushing, prying deeper, his questions growing sharper. I felt trapped in my own story. That's when I noticed it. He wasn't just playing a game with me.
He was testing me.
His smile didn't fade. Instead, it deepened, like a predator that had just found its prey. You think you're safe here, don't you? He said, almost to himself. You think you can walk away whenever you want. Those words sent a cold shiver through me. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. I didn't want to show it, but I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. I was no longer in control. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out thin, strained. Of course I can leave whenever I want, I said, forcing the words out. This is just a job. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked toward the window, staring out over the skyline of Dubai, the lights glittering below. You'll learn soon enough, he muttered, almost like he was speaking to himself. I felt my heart beat faster, the room growing warmer. Was it me, or had the temperature just gone up? I tried to laugh it off again, but this time I couldn't shake the fear that was creeping in. Something wasn't right. The next thing I knew, he turned and walked toward me with purpose. And before I could even process what was happening, everything went black. When I woke up, I was no longer in the hotel room. I didn't know where I was or how I got there. But one thing was painfully clear. I was no longer in control. I wasn't playing the role anymore. The game had changed. I was tied to a cold metal chair in a room that smelled like incense and something else, something that made my skin crawl. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, like I was waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape. My heart raced, but my mind was still foggy, trying to piece together the fragments of what had happened. I couldn't even remember how long I had been unconscious. Was it hours? Minutes? Time felt like it had stopped altogether. A low voice broke through my panic. Welcome to the real Dubai, the voice said, and I knew instantly it was him, the man from earlier. His voice was calm, too calm, like he was enjoying every second of my confusion. You thought you knew everything. You thought you could just play your part and walk away. But you're trapped now. Fear twisted in my stomach as I looked around the room. There was no window, no doors. Only shadows and strange symbols etched into the walls. The air was thick, suffocating. It hit me all at once. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't about the kind of work I thought it was. This was something far darker. Something that I could never have prepared for. I realized that the man wasn't just a client. He was something much worse. And just like that, I understood. I had made a fatal mistake. I wasn't just in a hotel room anymore. I was in a place where no one ever walks out. The luxury, the city, the wealth, it was all part of the trap. I had no idea who he really was, but I knew one thing for sure. This was a nightmare I wasn't going to wake up from unless I fought like hell. And I had no idea how to even begin that fight. But I would. I had to. Because this man, this place, whatever it was, had no idea who they were dealing with. And that's where everything started to go wrong. That's when the nightmare really began. I don't know when the moment of no return came. It felt like it happened in slow motion, but when I try to remember, it's as if I woke up in this nightmare without even realizing how I got there. The last thing I remember was him walking towards me, that cold smile still on his face. Then, everything went black. When I came to, I was no longer in that fancy hotel room. I wasn't in any place I recognized. I tried to move, but the chains, they were real, heavy, cold. I was bound to something hard, and my body felt stiff, like it had been lying still for days. But it was the darkness that hit me first. It wasn't just the kind of darkness you get at night. This was something suffocating, thick, like the kind of dark that doesn't just block out the light, it consumes it. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but I couldn't see a thing. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My mouth was dry, like I hadn't spoken in forever. And the silence, God, the silence, was louder than anything I'd ever known. My ears buzzed with it, and I started to panic. Where was I? What had happened to me? Then I felt the air shift. A figure moved in the room, and the faintest light from somewhere flickered, just enough to reveal a face I already knew. It was him, the man with the calm, too calm voice. He stood at the edge of my vision, his silhouette outlined by the dim light. "I told you," he said, his voice low and almost amused. "You thought you were in control. You thought this was just a job, but now you're mine." The words were like ice running through my veins. I was no longer in a hotel, no longer in a place where I had any power over what happened next. This wasn't about money, or even about pleasure. This was about something else entirely. I didn't know what it was at first, but I could feel it, a presence in the room that wasn't just him. It was something darker, something ancient. I couldn't explain it, but I knew right away that whatever I was trapped in wasn't human. And as the minutes dragged on, it only got worse. I don't know how much time passed. I lost track of everything, the hours, the seconds, even the reality of where I was. It felt like I was somewhere outside of time, somewhere between sleep and waking, between life and death. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. My thoughts started to scramble, and I felt like I was slipping away, losing myself to whatever was in the room with me. He came closer, then. I could feel him standing next to me, his breath cold against my face. His presence was suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight that I couldn't escape from. And that's when the whispers started. At first, I thought they were just in my head, but the more I listened, the more I realized they weren't. There were voices, low, guttural, like a language I couldn't understand. They were coming from somewhere in the darkness, but they seemed to wrap around me, closing in tighter with every passing moment. It wasn't just the man anymore. It was the room, the air, everything. It was as if the very walls were alive with whispers, with something that wanted to drag me into whatever hell they came from. I tried to scream, tried to shout for help, but the words died in my throat. My body felt numb, like it wasn't even mine anymore. I was trapped in my own skin, and I couldn't escape. The man didn't say anything else for a long time. He just stood there, watching me, like a cat toying with a mouse. And in that silence, those whispers grew louder, like they were coming from right inside my head. They told me things about myself, things about my past. They twisted everything I'd ever believed into something unrecognizable, something ugly. "You don't belong here," the voice hissed. "You think you're strong, but you're weak. You think you're in control, but you're not. You belong to us now." Every word felt like it was carving itself into my soul. I couldn't tell where the voice ended, and my own thoughts began. I started to feel like I was going crazy. It was too much fear, too much pain. And then, the darkness shifted again. I could hear footsteps, but they weren't coming from the man. They were coming from something deeper, from something far worse. The air grew colder, and I felt a chill run down my spine, sharp like a knife. My heart was racing, and my breath came in ragged gasps. "Do you know why you're here?" The man's voice cut through the suffocating silence, and this time, there was something different about it. There was no amusement, no calm, just pure malice. "You're here because you're weak. You're here because you think you can escape, but you can't. No one escapes. Not from this." I wanted to beg, to scream for mercy, but I couldn't. I couldn't even move. All I could do was listen as the whispers grew louder, as the footsteps got closer, and as the man's presence loomed over me, like a shadow that stretched forever. The room began to feel smaller, and the walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating me. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were screams, and they filled my ears, my mind, my soul. I could feel the darkness pressing in from all sides, swallowing me whole. In that moment, I understood. I understood what I had been caught in. It wasn't just a trap of flesh and blood. This was something else. Something evil. Something ancient. And I had no way out. But it wasn't just physical pain that broke me. It was the realization that I had sold my soul to this life. I had made my choices, and now I had to face the consequences. Every wrong step, every compromise I'd made, it had led me here, to this moment of total darkness. I was trapped in the belly of this nightmare, with no way to escape. And the worst part? I didn't even know how I'd gotten here in the first place. I was starting to lose myself, and that scared me more than anything. I had been living in a fantasy before, thinking I could control my own life, that I could walk away when I wanted. But now I was living the truth. And the truth was this: there was no escaping this darkness. Not without help. Not without a power greater than anything I'd ever known. And in that moment, I didn't know if help would ever come. But one thing I knew for sure: this was only the beginning. I still don't know how they moved me, where they took me, or what happened in the hours I lost consciousness. But when I woke up, I was somewhere different. Somewhere worse. The air smelled of incense and something sharp, like metal, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My hands were bound tightly again, this time to a cold stone surface. I couldn't see much at first, the room was so dim, but there was something that made my heart sink the moment I realized where I was. This wasn't a hotel room. This wasn't the slick, polished facade of the city I had been so eager to embrace. This place was a tomb. I remember trying to adjust my eyes, trying to get a better sense of the room. At first, I thought maybe I was still dreaming, that this was just some cruel hallucination. But the more I tried to move, the more I felt my body being trapped by invisible forces. There was a weight in the air, as if the very walls were closing in on me. I could feel the pressure on my chest, each breath harder than the last. It wasn't just the chains that held me down. It was the darkness that filled the room, thick and suffocating. Then I heard it, the sound that would stay with me forever. The chanting. Low, rhythmic, like a song that had been sung for centuries, passed down from one generation to the next. It wasn't a song of life, though. It was a song of death. I tried to scream again, but the words wouldn't come. My mouth was dry, and the air felt too thick to push any sound through my throat. Instead, I heard the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, slow, approaching. And then there he was, the man who had led me here, the man who had bought me. But he wasn't alone. There were others. Figures in dark robes, their faces hidden in shadow. I could feel their eyes on me, even though I couldn't see them. The air seemed to shift around them, and with each breath, I could feel something ancient and dangerous gathering in the room. I didn't know what they wanted from me. I didn't know what I had to offer them. But I knew one thing. I was about to become part of something I could never escape. He stepped forward, that same eerie calm in his eyes, as if this was all part of a plan he had seen play out 1,000 times. "You've been chosen," he said. The words sounded rehearsed, like he had said them to countless others before me. And now, the ritual begins. I didn't understand what he meant by that, not at first. But as the chanting grew louder, more frantic, I began to feel it. There was something in the air, something cold and cruel, and it was pulling at me. I felt as though I was being dragged into the very bowels of hell, unable to stop myself. The robed figures moved around me, their hands outstretched, murmuring in that strange language, as if trying to pull something out of me, something that didn't belong. I couldn't stop shaking. I wanted to fight, to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey me. It felt like I was being ripped apart from the inside out, like my very soul was being stretched to its limits. I could feel the darkness crawling under my skin, the cold whispers of evil curling into my thoughts. It was like I could hear the screams of every soul who had been here before me, and the thought of joining them, becoming part of whatever this was, nearly broke me. Then, without warning, they began. One of the robed figures lifted a knife, ancient, curved, its blade shimmering in the dim light, and held it above me. I knew what it meant. This was no longer a game. This was real. Fear surged through me, my heart pounding in my chest as they began to chant louder, faster. The room spun, and I felt like I was falling through the floor, through time itself. My mind tried to fight it, tried to focus on anything but the blade hovering over me, but the darkness in the room was too thick. It had a weight to it. I could feel it pressing on my chest, crushing the breath out of me. And then the unthinkable happened. Just when I thought it was over, when I thought the cold steel would pierce my skin, I heard something. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. It was a feeling, a force that shot through my veins like electricity, filling me with warmth, with life, with something stronger than fear, something greater than them. I tried to hold on to that feeling. Whatever it was pulling me away from the terror surrounding me. I couldn't explain it, but in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them take me. Not like this. Not without a fight. I didn't know how I did it, but with every ounce of strength I had left, I pulled against the chains that held me, screaming as I fought to break free from their grasp. The darkness roared around me, but I refused to give in. I refused to let them win. I don't know how long I fought. Seconds? Minutes? But finally, I felt the chains loosen, just enough to break free. With one final, desperate pull, I shattered the hold they had over me. I fell to the floor, gasping for air, the oppressive weight lifting from my chest. But even as I crawled away, trying to escape the nightmare that had consumed me, I could still hear them. The robed figures, the chanting. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't the end. This wasn't even the beginning. They weren't finished with me. Not by a long shot. And as I stumbled through the darkness, trying to find my way out, one thought kept repeating in my mind. I have to survive. I have to survive. I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. I didn't know how deep the darkness ran or how far it would stretch. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them win. Not yet. Not ever. But at that moment, I had no idea what was waiting for me next. There are moments in life where the darkness is so thick, you can feel it in your bones. I've never known fear like I did when I was bound in that stone room, helpless and suffocating under the weight of evil. Every cell in my body screamed to get away, to run, to fight. But I couldn't. Not then. I was at the edge. I could feel myself slipping away, my consciousness fading, like my body was becoming a ghost, nothing more than an empty shell. I could hear those voices, those dark whispers, like they were eating at me, bit by bit, until I was no longer sure where I ended and the darkness began. It was overwhelming, suffocating, like drowning in a sea of shadows. I had no strength left, no fight in me. It seemed like I was being pulled under by the weight of my own terror, my own helplessness. But just when I thought I was done, just when I thought I'd lost everything, something shifted inside of me. It was like a spark, barely a whisper in the deepest corners of my mind, but it was there. Something was stirring, and I could feel it. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like a breath of fresh air, the slightest rush of cool wind on a hot day. A feeling that said, I'm not done yet. I started to breathe again, slow, deep, shaky breaths. At first, it felt like I was just trying to survive, just trying to hold on to any scrap of my sanity that I could. But as I breathed, something in me began to change. I realized that I wasn't alone. There was a presence, a feeling of warmth, that pierced through the cold, suffocating darkness around me. For the first time since I'd been taken, I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't just a piece of meat in a sick ritual. No. Something had woken up in me, and I wasn't just going to lie there and let them win. Not now. Not ever. The first sign that I wasn't alone came in the form of a whisper. It wasn't a voice that I could hear with my ears, but it was there, deep inside my mind. You're not alone. I felt it, like a ripple in the air, like something was breaking through the darkness. The weight that had been pressing on my chest began to lift, just enough to allow me to draw a breath. The chanting, that horrible chant, it started to fade into the background. I didn't know where the strength was coming from, but I wasn't going to waste it. I fought against the chains again, but this time, it wasn't desperation. This time, I had a sense of purpose. My muscles burned, my body ached from the strain, But I didn't care. I was done being a prisoner, done being the prey. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was defiance. The room grew colder, the shadows darker, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to be broken. Not this time. With a final, desperate yank, the chains that had held me snapped. Not by strength alone, but by that voice, the one that whispered, the one that gave me courage I didn't know I had. I didn't understand it, but I knew this. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I fell to the ground, gasping for air. I didn't care that the room was spinning. I didn't care that the voices were still whispering, still trying to pull me under. I was free. For the first time, I looked around the room, really looked, and that's when I saw it. The shadows weren't just shadows. They were shapes, things, creatures, or maybe just spirits. Who knows? They were moving around me, watching me, but they didn't seem to be able to touch me. They couldn't reach me. The chains had broken, and with them, the curse that had held me captive for so long. The man who had led me here, he was still there, standing in the corner of the room, watching me with those cold, predatory eyes. But he wasn't smiling now. The calm demeanor was gone. Now there was only anger and fear, because for the first time since I had met him, I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I rose to my feet, shaking, but I stood tall. My body still hurt from the torture, but my spirit was burning with something I hadn't known I had in me. I couldn't explain it. I didn't need to. I just knew that I was no longer the prey. And if they were going to take me, they would have to go through me. But I wasn't alone. That whisper, that presence, it was still with me, and it was stronger than ever. Whatever it wasn't letting go. It was like the last breath of a dying ember, a spark that refused to go out. You will not be taken. It wasn't a question. It was a command, a promise. And I believed it. For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed that I could survive this. I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just someone to be used. I had a purpose. And that purpose wasn't just to survive, it was to fight. I didn't know what was waiting for me outside that room. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be dragged into whatever hell they had planned for me. I was going to fight with every ounce of strength I had left. I took a step forward, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. I had no plan. I had no weapon. But I had something stronger than all of them combined. And that was all I needed. The darkness didn't seem so terrifying anymore. Because now, I knew what I had to do. I had to survive. I had to get out of there. And with every step, I knew I was one step closer to freedom. And maybe, just maybe, one step closer to understanding the force that had awakened inside me. The force that had saved me. The force that would not let me go. Whatever it was with me now. And it wasn't going anywhere. I remember the first few moments after breaking free like it was yesterday. My heart was hammering in my chest, every breath coming in quick gasps. The chains that had bound me to that cold stone table were nothing now but broken fragments of a nightmare I was ready to forget. I couldn't waste time trying to figure out how I'd gotten away. The only thing that mattered was getting out of there. But the thing is, when you're caught in a place that's dark in every way, when you've been held by forces you can't even understand, escaping isn't as simple as running. The moment I stood, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. The fear, the shock, the pain. My body wanted to collapse, to give in, but I couldn't. I couldn't let myself. I had fought too hard to get here. This wasn't some twisted game anymore. It was real, and if I didn't keep moving, I wasn't going to make it out alive. I stumbled through that room, my legs shaky, the air still thick with something that felt like death itself. I could still hear the chanting, like it was coming from the walls, or maybe it was in my head. I don't know, but every step I took felt like I was walking through fog. I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what the hell was happening, but there was one thing I was sure of. I wasn't going to just lie down and die. I don't know how long I walked through the darkness. It felt like hours, but time didn't matter. I couldn't focus on anything other than my feet moving and my mind screaming at me to keep going. At one point, I thought I saw someone, a figure moving through the darkness. My heart nearly stopped, and for a second, I was sure it was one of them. One of those robed figures, coming to drag me back into the hell I had just escaped. But when I blinked, the figure was gone. My head was spinning. My vision blurred. And the whispers? They didn't stop. They were in my head, in my soul, gnawing at me like rats inside a cage. But I pushed forward. There was no other choice. It wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about survival. About showing myself, that I wasn't going to let them win. Not when I had come this far. I don't know how I found the door. Maybe it was a stroke of luck. Maybe it was just the will to live. But suddenly, there it was, a way out. The door was heavy, old, but it opened with a creak. I stepped through it into the cold, night air. The world outside felt strange, like I had forgotten what it was supposed to be. The city was quiet, too quiet, as though it was holding its breath, waiting to see if I would make it. I didn't know where I was, but I ran. I ran like I was being chased. Like I could feel their eyes on me, even though I knew they weren't physically there. The darkness still had its grip on me, lingering in the corners of my mind. But the further I got, the lighter the world seemed. The air wasn't as suffocating. The silence felt less threatening. I don't remember how long I ran. All I knew was that I couldn't stop. My body was aching, bruised, and battered from everything they had done to me. But the pain didn't matter. The fear didn't matter. All that mattered was putting one foot in front of the other and making it to the next step. Eventually, I found myself on the outskirts of the city, the lights fading into the distance. The further I got from that place, the more I felt myself coming back to life. But I wasn't free yet. Not really. My escape didn't end that night. It didn't end when I took my first breath of fresh air in what felt like forever. It didn't end when I made it out of their grasp, because the real battle was just beginning. I still had to find a way to heal, to put myself back together. But that came much later, and that was something I wasn't prepared for. Not then. The first few days after my escape were a blur. I remember people talking to me, asking me questions, trying to get me to speak. But I couldn't. I couldn't put the nightmare into words. How do you explain something like that? How do you make sense of the horrors you've lived through when your own mind is struggling to grasp it? I was taken to a safe house, a place where I could hide and try to heal. But the healing didn't come quickly. It wasn't some simple fix. It wasn't like the moment I stepped into that safe house, I felt better. It wasn't like I woke up the next morning and felt like myself again. No. I was broken. Completely shattered. The trauma, the fear, the memories, those things don't go away overnight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to hit something, anything, to make it all go away. But I couldn't. I couldn't even make sense of the mess in my mind. I was a puzzle with pieces scattered everywhere, and every time I tried to put together, I just got more lost. The first time I had a nightmare, I couldn't breathe. I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing. I had no idea where I was. I thought I was still there, trapped. I thought I was still in that dark room, with the chanting and the whispers. My body was covered in sweat, and I felt like I couldn't move, like I was paralyzed. But eventually, the nightmares became less frequent. The days grew longer, and I started to feel like I could breathe again. But that didn't mean I was healed. It didn't mean I was okay. It meant I was surviving. Every day, I forced myself to move forward. I couldn't let the darkness win. I couldn't let it define me. I'd survived that night, yes, but survival wasn't enough. I had to reclaim myself. I had to heal, even if it meant taking it one slow step at a time. I sought help. Therapy, support groups, anything I could find to pull myself out of the hole I was in. But there were days when the weight of it all felt like too much. Days when I wanted to give up. When I thought maybe it would be easier just to let the darkness take me. But then, I remembered the moment I stood up in that room. The moment I broke free. I remembered the feeling of defiance, of survival. And I knew that as long as I had that inside me, as long as I had that fire, I couldn't be defeated. Slowly, over time, I started to find pieces of myself again. I started to remember who I was before all of this. I started to believe that I could rebuild my life, piece by piece. And maybe, just maybe, I could help others find their way out of the darkness too. The road to recovery was long. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. And no matter what happened next, I would walk it because I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back.
Not now.
Not ever. They say facing your fears is the first step to overcoming them, but let me tell you, no one ever told me how much courage it takes to confront something you can't see, something that's not just in front of you, but inside of you. After escaping, after surviving, I thought I was free. But that wasn't the end. It wasn't even close. The thing about being trapped by darkness, whether it's the kind you can't see or the kind you can't touch, is that it follows you. It doesn't just vanish because you run. I thought the hardest part was escaping, but no, the real battle was when the door slammed behind me and I was finally out in the world again. I could breathe, but the demons, the whispers, they didn't stop. They stayed with me. The darkness wasn't just a room, or a man, or even the people who'd hurt me. It was in my head. It was in my soul. I had a moment, not long after I escaped, when I thought, okay, now it's time to heal. Everything's going to be fine. You hear that a lot, don't you? Just give it time, you'll heal. It sounds so simple, like the trauma you've lived through is some kind of distant memory, fading as easily as the last bit of sunset light. But that's a lie. You don't heal from that kind of horror, like a scraped knee. You don't just wake up one day and feel okay. You're haunted. You're broken. And the worst part? You start to wonder if that darkness is now part of you. I remember the first time I felt it again. It was weeks after I'd gotten away. I was in my apartment, alone, trying to get my life together. I'd made small steps, found a job, started seeing a therapist, tried to live like a normal person. But then, one night, the air felt thick again. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone like I had a million things to do, but inside, I felt something shift. I froze. For a moment, it was like I wasn't in that apartment anymore. I was back in that dark room, on that cold stone table. I could almost hear the chanting again, feel those chains tightening around my wrists. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself I was imagining things, that I had come so far, that I was fine. But I wasn't fine. Not at all. I was scared. I was terrified that the very thing I'd escaped was inside me, waiting to break me open again. And the worst part? I was starting to accept it. I started to believe that maybe I would always be this way, fractured, haunted. That maybe the darkness wasn't something I could escape, not really. I spent days battling that fear. I fought it with everything I had, but the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it became. The shadows in my mind began to feel like they were winning, wrapping themselves tighter around me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. Then one night, after I had spent hours staring at the ceiling, I realized something. I had been running from the darkness for so long, trying to hide from it, to forget it. But what if running away from it was the very thing that kept it alive? I had survived all of that. I had gotten out of the hands of those who wanted to destroy me, but I had never truly confronted what they had done to me. I had never faced the darkness, the very thing that had tried to break me, and I was letting it control me from the inside. That's when I realized what I had to do. I had to face it. I had to stand in front of it and say, I'm not afraid of you anymore.
So I did.
It wasn't some grand, heroic moment. It didn't come with fireworks or some miraculous surge of strength. It came quietly, in the dead of night, as I sat there alone in my apartment, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I finally said it out loud. I am not your prisoner anymore. That was the first step. I didn't feel stronger. I didn't feel invincible. But I felt something that had been missing for so long. I felt a spark of my own will again. But the darkness? It wasn't done. No, it's never done. And it didn't go away just because I confronted it. It still haunted me, still whispered when I least expected it. Every time I tried to move forward, there it was, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. But I realized something even more important. It wasn't just trying to control me. It was trying to make me forget who I was. To make me forget that I was stronger than it. In those moments of fear, of self-doubt. I started to dig deeper. I began to ask myself questions I had been avoiding.
Who am I really?
What have I survived? What makes me who I am? And the answers? They weren't in the chains that had held me down, or in the darkness that had surrounded me.
They were in me.
I realized I was more than what had happened to me. I was more than the fear, more than the pain, more than the darkness. For weeks, I fought the shadows, sometimes quietly, sometimes in silence, sometimes out loud when the fear was so strong that it felt like it would swallow me whole. But I wasn't alone anymore. No matter how isolated I felt, no matter how much I doubted myself, I knew that I was stronger than I had ever believed. And I knew I had the power to fight it, not because I had some secret ability, but because I had survived. I started taking those small steps toward the light, even when it felt like the darkness was closing in on me. Some days were easier than others. Some days, the fear tried to pull me under again, but every day that I refused to let it win, I got a little stronger. And slowly, the shadows began to recede. They weren't gone. No, they never will be. But I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't letting them control me. When you've survived something like I did, you realize something. The darkness is always there, lurking just beneath the surface. But it doesn't own you. It doesn't define you. It's not easy. Some days, it feels like that darkness will swallow you whole. But I've learned that the only way to survive it is to keep moving forward.
To keep facing it.
To keep fighting. And when you fight, you find the strength that's buried deep inside you. That's what I've learned. I'm not broken. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. And I refuse to let the darkness win. Maybe one day, it will stop whispering. Maybe one day, the shadows will fade completely. But for now, I know one thing. I will always face it. Because no matter how dark it gets, I know that I have something the darkness can never take away from me. My will to survive. And that's something no one can ever break. It's a strange thing, isn't it? Redemption. We think of it as something far off, something that happens once you've paid your dues. You know, that moment when you've been broken, when you've been through hell and back, and somehow, just somehow, you find the strength to rise up again. It sounds beautiful, right? Almost poetic, like it's supposed to be a clean, tidy transformation. But let me tell you something. Redemption doesn't come wrapped in a neat little package. It comes in pieces, jagged and sharp, like trying to put together a puzzle when half the pieces are missing. After I escaped, after I found the strength to stand up for myself again, I thought it would be easier. I thought that somehow, magically, the darkness would fade, and the shame, the guilt, and the fear would slip away with it. That's what I told myself every time I looked in the mirror. You survived. You're free now. But even when I told myself those things, there was a part of me that didn't believe it. That part, the part that still felt broken, clung to the idea that redemption was something I would earn. That if I just did enough good things, if I kept moving forward, kept being brave, I could undo everything that had been done to me. It's funny, isn't it? The way we think we have to earn forgiveness. Like we're somehow supposed to deserve it. But here's the thing about redemption. It isn't something you earn. It's something that's given to you. And it took me so long to realize that. I spent months trying to find a way to fix myself. I tried everything I could think of. Therapy, support groups, journaling, the occasional yoga session that never worked because, let's be real, I wasn't exactly feeling zen. I threw myself into work, into helping others, thinking that somehow doing good in the world would wash away the shame that had settled deep inside me. But it didn't. Nothing did. Then, one day, I met someone who made me look at everything differently. I was at a support group, feeling like the same broken person I always was when I heard her speak. She was older than me, probably in her 50s, and at first I didn't think she had anything to teach me. She had her own scars, her own story of survival, but her attitude was different. She wasn't talking about how to fix yourself. She wasn't giving us advice on how to be better or stronger. Instead, she said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to let go. At first, I didn't understand. Let go of what? I had to fight. I had to keep surviving. Every day felt like a battle, and I couldn't afford to lose. But the more she spoke, the more I realized that I had been holding onto something that was keeping me chained. Guilt.
Shame.
The belief that I didn't deserve redemption. I thought that in order to be free, I had to prove myself to everyone. I had to show the world that I was okay. But what if, I wondered, what if the truth was that I didn't have to do anything at all? What if the redemption I was searching for was already there, waiting for me to accept it? It wasn't an overnight transformation. Trust me, if I could tell you that I woke up one day and everything was magically fixed, I'd be lying. But in the months that followed, something shifted. Slowly, piece by piece, I started to let go of the need to be perfect. I started to accept the broken parts of myself. I started to let go of the idea that I had to earn my freedom and my forgiveness. I began to understand that redemption wasn't something I had to fight for, it was something that was already mine, something that had been given to me the moment I survived. And that's when the healing started. Not when I fixed myself, not when I did everything right, but when I accepted the brokenness. When I stopped pretending to be perfect, when I embraced the cracks in my soul, that's when I began to find peace. I wish I could say that the darkness disappeared completely after that. I wish I could tell you that I woke up one morning and felt light as a feather, like the weight of the past had evaporated into thin air. But that's not how it works. The darkness is still there, sometimes louder than others. The memories are still sharp, and the scars haven't gone away. But here's the thing, I've learned to live with it, to acknowledge it without letting it define me. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. I still have my bad days, the days when the fear creeps back in, when the darkness tries to swallow me whole. But I don't run from it anymore. I stand up to it. I look it in the face and say, "You're not going to break me." Redemption isn't a one-time thing. It's not some destination you reach, and then you're done. It's an ongoing process. A choice you make every single day to keep moving forward, even when it feels impossible. And let me tell you, there are days when it feels impossible. There are days when I wonder if I'm ever really going to be whole again. But then I remind myself of what I've already survived, and I keep going, one step at a time. Because redemption isn't just about surviving the darkness. It's about learning how to live in the light again. It's about realizing that no matter what happens, no matter how broken you feel, you're never too far gone to come back. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real lesson I needed to learn. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to fix yourself to be worthy. Redemption is about accepting the broken parts, embracing the scars, and continuing to move forward, even when it's hard. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm moving forward. Every day. It's not easy, but it's mine. And I'm finally starting to believe that I'm worthy of it. All of it. I'm not the person I was before. I'm not the same broken girl who walked into that dark room. But I'm not perfect. I'm just me. And that's enough. There are things in this world you can't unsee. Once you've seen them, once you've felt them, they stay with you, etched into your mind, marking you forever. And that's the truth I had to accept. What I went through wasn't just some bad experience I could bury and forget. It wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. No, the darkness I had been trapped in wasn't something I could escape without leaving a piece of myself behind. But more than that, it was something bigger than me, bigger than my pain, bigger than the walls they built around me. It was a system, a machine designed to grind people like me into dust. And if I didn't expose it, if I didn't let the world know what I had seen, then I was just as complicit as the ones who had used me. I didn't know where to start. How do you begin telling a story like mine? How do you expose the hidden horrors of the world when everyone around you just wants to turn a blind eye? But I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I couldn't sit back and pretend that the darkness wasn't out there, stalking, waiting for its next victim. I remember the first time I told someone what had really happened. I had spent so long suppressing the memory, so long trying to convince myself that if I didn't talk about it, if I didn't speak the truth, then maybe I could keep the peace. I was terrified of the fallout, terrified of the people who would look at me like I was broken or crazy. But in that moment, when the words finally came out, when I let myself say the things I'd been holding in for so long, I realized something. Speaking the truth wasn't just about setting myself free. It was about making sure it didn't happen to anyone else. So I started to talk to whoever would listen. It wasn't easy, not by a long shot. You'd be surprised how many people will nod their heads and tell you they understand, only to turn around and go about their lives as if your suffering is some kind of distant tragedy that doesn't affect them. I had my fair share of those reactions. People who couldn't handle the rawness of what I was saying, people who couldn't fathom that there were forces out there, lurking, that cared so little for human life. But I also found people who were willing to listen, who were willing to believe me. And that made all the difference. I didn't want to be one of those people who kept their mouth shut, who let the darkness fester in silence. I wasn't going to sit back while the same evil was happening to others. If I didn't speak out, then who would? If I didn't expose the truth, how could I ever truly heal? But exposing the darkness wasn't as simple as just talking. Oh no. This wasn't some easy victory lap where I could throw some words into the air and watch the truth magically set everyone free. This was a battle. And as soon as I started opening up, I felt the weight of it. The consequences. The backlash. People don't like to confront the darkness. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. It makes people question everything they thought they knew about the world. The truth isn't always a comfort. And that's exactly why it needs to be said. The more I talked, the more I realized how deep this thing went. It wasn't just about me or my experience. It wasn't just about what I'd endured. This was bigger. This was about the system that used people like me to feed its insatiable hunger for power, for control. The people who trafficked women, who orchestrated rituals, who sold lives for profit. These were not isolated cases. This was a network built on lies and secrets, with far too many powerful people invested in keeping it all hidden. At first, I didn't even know where to begin. I couldn't expose everything at once. The web was too vast. But I knew I had to start somewhere. So I started with the small things, the details, the moments that others might overlook, the names, the faces, the places. Little by little, I built a picture of what had been done to me, what had been done to so many others. And then I found the courage to reach out to people who had the power to help. I didn't do it alone. I didn't have to. I found allies. People who had been fighting this fight for longer than I had, people who had the knowledge, the resources, the connections to make a real difference. And with their help, I began to pull back the curtain, to expose the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how dangerous. It wasn't easy. I knew that once I opened this Pandora's box, there was no going back. The people I was exposing weren't the kind of people who let you walk away unscathed. I had seen what they were capable of. I had seen what they did to people who threatened their empire. But here's the thing. By the time I started to expose the truth, I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to let them intimidate me into silence. Because I knew one thing. If I stayed quiet, if I allowed myself to be afraid, then I was just as guilty as they were. I had a choice, and I chose to speak out. The further I went, the more I realized just how far the darkness had spread. The network wasn't just limited to the people I had been forced to work with. It was global. It was insidious. And it was thriving in the shadows, protected by a system that valued money, power, and control over human lives. Exposing it wasn't just about stopping a few bad people. It was about dismantling an entire system, one that had built its empire on the backs of the vulnerable. Every time I took a step forward, I knew I was walking into dangerous territory. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had found people who cared. People who were willing to risk everything to help me bring this darkness to light. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. But I wasn't going to stop. There's something powerful in truth. It's messy, it's painful, and it's never as pretty as we want it to be. But the thing about truth is this. It can't be hidden forever. Eventually, it comes to the surface. And when it does, it has the power to change everything. So I kept going. I kept speaking out, even when it felt like I was up against the whole world. I kept telling my story, even when I was scared, because I knew that if I didn't, nothing would change. If I didn't speak up, if I didn't expose what was hiding in the shadows, then I would be complicit in the very thing that had almost destroyed me. And let me tell you something, the more I spoke, the more I saw the impact of my words. The more people started to listen. The more the world began to realize just how deep this problem ran. And that gave me hope. The darkness didn't win. Not yet. It might never win again. And that's the power of exposing the truth. It might take time. It might take every ounce of strength you have. But if you keep pushing, if you keep speaking, eventually the darkness will have to face the light. If you'd asked me a year ago if I thought redemption was possible, I would have laughed bitterly and told you to save your optimism for someone else. Back then, I couldn't see how any good could come out of the hell I had been through. I was broken, haunted by what I'd seen, what I'd survived. My soul felt like a shattered mirror, and the pieces seemed too far apart to ever put together. You don't walk through the kind of darkness I did and come out unscathed. I thought that was it for me, that I'd be forever scarred, forever running from the things that haunted me. I didn't think I could ever be whole again. But somewhere along the way, through the pain, through the tears, through every battle I fought within myself, I started to believe in something I hadn't before. I started to believe in the possibility of healing. Not in some fantasy where everything magically gets better overnight. No, this was a different kind of belief. It wasn't about expecting perfection. It was about accepting that even in the deepest parts of me, where the wounds were darkest, there was still a chance for something more. You see, redemption isn't this shiny, glorious thing where you just wake up one day and feel like a brand new person. It's not about suddenly becoming perfect or finding some magical cure-all that fixes everything that's wrong. It's about learning to accept yourself, even in your brokenness. It's about seeing yourself for who you really are, both the hurt and the healing, and choosing to keep moving forward, even when the path is filled with obstacles. I spent so much time looking for something outside of myself to fix me. I was looking for a savior, someone or something to come in and clean up the mess. But the truth is, I had to be the one to pick up the pieces. I had to face every fear, every painful memory, and say, I'm still here. I'm still fighting. The more I said it, the more I realized it wasn't just about surviving. It was about taking control of my story, taking back what had been stolen from me. Redemption wasn't a moment. It was a process. It was in the small victories, in the moments when I would sit with myself and realize that I didn't need to be ashamed of my scars anymore. I had been through hell, yes, but I wasn't defined by it. And that was the hardest part to accept. That I didn't have to carry the weight of my past forever. I could put it down. The day I truly realized this was a quiet one. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand revelation with fireworks and angels singing in the background. It was just me sitting alone in my apartment, looking out the window. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't filled with anger. I wasn't scared. I just felt still. And for the first time, it didn't feel like the darkness was hovering over me. It wasn't trying to consume me. Instead, it felt like I had finally stepped out from underneath its shadow. I had claimed my space. I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to be fixed. I was enough. All the broken pieces, they were still mine. I still had them. But I wasn't hiding them anymore. I wasn't pretending they didn't exist. I didn't have to erase the past to move forward. The past was a part of me, but it didn't have to control me. The more I started to believe that, the more I realized that redemption didn't have to be something that came from the outside. It came from within. I had to choose it. I had to choose to forgive myself, to stop punishing myself for something that wasn't my fault. I had to stop living in the shadow of that darkness and step into the light, even if it was just a sliver at first.
And you know what?
I'm still walking that path. Some days are harder than others. Some days, the shadows creep back in, and I can feel them pressing against me. But those days don't own me anymore. I know now that I don't have to be afraid of the darkness. I can look it in the face and say, you're not in control anymore. I'm not perfect. I'm not healed in the way people like to imagine healing. But I'm here. I'm living. I'm still standing. And every day that I get out of bed, every day that I make it through, is another victory. Every day that I refuse to let the past define me is a step toward redemption. The road to redemption is messy. It's not a straight path. There's no finish line where you can finally say, I'm done. I'm perfect now. That's not how it works. Redemption is a constant choice. It's waking up every day and saying, I will not let my past control me. It's about showing up for yourself, even when it feels like the world is trying to tear you apart. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm moving towards something better. It's not a perfect life, but it's mine. And I'm learning to embrace it. I'm learning that the broken parts of me are just as valuable as the healed parts. They've taught me things I could never have learned otherwise. And maybe, just maybe, I'm starting to believe that there's more waiting for me. Not in some grand, perfect future, but in the everyday moments, in the little victories, in the ways I keep moving forward, even when it feels impossible. I've learned to forgive myself. I've learned to accept my flaws and my scars. I've learned to live in a way that's true to who I am, not who the world tells me I should be. And in that, I've found redemption. Not because I've earned it, but because I've chosen it. And that, my friend, is the most powerful kind of redemption there is. I used to think hope was for people who hadn't been through the things I had. People who still believed that good things could happen to them. I couldn't even understand how anyone could talk about hope when the world felt like it was full of shadows, full of lies, full of people waiting to take advantage of those who had nothing left. For a long time, I didn't have any hope. I thought it was something that belonged to other people, to the lucky ones, to the ones who hadn't seen the darkness. But here's the thing about hope. It doesn't care where you've been or what you've done. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect, to have it all together, or to be some model of strength. Hope doesn't require you to be unbroken. If anything, hope shows up when you're at your worst, when you've been shattered into 1,000 pieces and you're sure you'll never be whole again. I wasn't looking for hope when I found it. Honestly, I was just trying to survive. Just trying to get through each day without falling apart. I wasn't looking for some grand redemption or a big moment of change. I just wanted the noise to stop. I just wanted the fear to leave. But what I didn't know was that the very thing I had been fighting against, hope, was quietly building inside me, even when I couldn't see it. It started with something small. One day, I woke up and didn't feel like I was drowning. I still had nightmares. I still had the weight of everything I had been through pressing on me. But I didn't feel hopeless anymore. It wasn't some big, dramatic moment. There was no lightning bolt or angels singing in the background. It was just peace. A small, fleeting peace that told me I wasn't done yet. I wasn't broken beyond repair. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the darkness. Hope didn't come from the world around me. It didn't come from other people telling me everything would be okay. In fact, some people told me things I didn't want to hear, things like, you just need to move on or you've got to let go of the past. Well, that's easier said than done. But hope? Hope wasn't something someone could give me. It wasn't something I had to beg for. It was something I had to choose. I chose hope every day, even when it felt like it was the hardest thing in the world. Even when it seemed like the darkness was still closing in on me, I chose to believe that something better was waiting for me. And that wasn't about me being strong or perfect. It wasn't about me being some hero. It was about me accepting the truth that I was still alive. And if I was still alive, then there was a reason to keep going. It's funny, isn't it? How we convince ourselves that things can't get better, that we're too far gone, too broken. But the truth is, there is always a way out. It's not easy, but it's there. It's not instant, but it's real. And it doesn't require perfection. It just requires a choice. So, I'm telling you this. If you're reading this, if you've made it this far, it's because you're still here. You're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, then you have hope. Maybe it's small. Maybe it's just a flicker right now, hidden deep inside. But it's there. And it's enough. I know what it's like to feel like the weight of the world is too much to carry. I know what it's like to wonder if you'll ever feel free again. But I also know this. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to face the darkness on your own. There are people who will stand with you. There is light waiting for you. It might take time. Hell, it might take years. But if you choose to keep going, if you choose to believe in something better, you will find your way. You will find your redemption. It won't be perfect. It won't look like what you expect. But it will be yours. And that's all that matters. I'm not whole yet. I'm not healed in the way I thought I'd be, but I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not running from the past. I'm walking through it, and that's the difference. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep moving forward, one step at a time. So if you're watching this, and if you're still struggling, still fighting, remember this. There is hope. It's there, even when you can't see it. It's inside you, waiting for you to grab hold of it. You are not defined by your past. You are not defined by the darkness. You are defined by the fact that you're still here. And as long as you're still here, there's always a chance for redemption.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope this testimony has touched your heart and reminded you of the incredible things God can do in our lives. If you believe in the power of prayer, leave one in the comments below. If you have your own testimony of God's miracles, share it with us. Your story can change someone's life. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it's okay. But ask yourself, could it be that you're not fully walking with Jesus yet? Could it be that you're missing out on the miracles He wants to show you? Don't wait any longer. Hit that subscribe button and be part of something bigger than yourself. God bless you. And remember, He is always with you.
Keep going.
Keep fighting. And when it feels like you can't take another step, just remember, you're not alone. There is hope. And one day, you will look back at everything you've survived and realize that the darkest moments of your life were just the beginning of something better. You will be free, you will heal, and you will find peace. You just have to choose it.